The low hum of the AC blended with the smell of motor oil and hot metal at Silver Torque Garage, a sleek, high-end shop catering to the ultra-wealthy and their multi-million-dollar cars. What was supposed to be a routine shift meeting suddenly turned razor tense when Richard Blake, the white chief engineer with slicked-back hair and a perfectly pressed shirt, raised his voice. "Can you stay quiet and let the professionals speak? Around here, mechanics don't get to comment. Just tighten the bolts to spec, that's all." The room, crowded as it was, fell dead silent. Eyes darted toward the scene, then quickly dropped. No one spoke. No one smiled, at least not for real. The man being humiliated was Jeremiah Carter, 43 years old, calloused hands wrapped in black gloves stained with oil. Moments earlier, he'd pointed out a dangerous fault in the electronic brake system of a Bentley Continental GT, a VIP client's car, in for a full diagnostic. Jeremiah had spoken calmly, matter-of-factly. The left front brakes got an unusual delay. Might be a speed sensor mismatch with the upgraded operating system. It was a precise professional observation, but it didn't fit the script running in Richard's head. Oh, so now the grease monkey wants to lecture the MIT engineer on advanced vehicle tech? The words landed like a slap, not just to Jeremiah, but to everyone in that room who'd ever been judged for the color of their skin or the dirt on their hands. A few people chuckled, not because it was funny, but because they were afraid. What none of them knew was that the man they'd just dismissed as just a mechanic was the founder of the very place they were standing in. And the shockwave from today's insult would soon shake the entire system to its core. The air in the garage felt thick, not from fumes or dust, but from something harder to name, the suffocating weight of silence when justice is treated like an inconvenience. Jeremiah Carter still stood there, oil-stained gloves holding the inspection sheet. He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. He just spoke, soft as a breeze. "I just thought someone should speak up before an accident happens." It wasn't a protest, but somehow it cut sharper than any shout, like a blade slicing clean through the polished mask of professionalism that cloaked the garage. Richard curled his lip, ready to fire back, but then he caught Jeremiah's gaze, a gaze so still it stopped him cold, not submissive, not weak. It was the look of a man who's seen the trap laid out and is patiently waiting to see who walks into it. Around them, quiet whispers flickered. "He's only been here 2 weeks, right? Wonder where he came from. Kind of old to just be a mechanic." What no one realized was that the silent man in front of them was the founder of Silver Torque, the luxury garage chain stretching from New York to Houston. Jeremiah was once the kid who scrubbed chrome wheels in a parking lot for tips. Once the technician turned away for being not the right look. The guy who stayed up nights studying hybrid systems while others laughed at the idea of electric engines. And now, he stood quietly among the very engineers he had handpicked. Like a shadow, everyone had trained themselves not to see. But from within that shadow, a seismic shift was quietly beginning to build. Near the end of the morning shift, as the technicians were wrapping up routine inspections, a soft ding sounded from Richard Blake's phone. He glanced at the screen, then froze. An urgent email from headquarters. Notice: Mr. Jeremiah Carter, founder of Silver Torque, will personally inspect the Los Angeles facility within 15 minutes. All staff are to prepare immediately. Sweat broke beneath the crisp folds of Richard's perfectly pressed shirt. His hand trembled slightly as he set the phone down. "The founders coming here?" he muttered, stunned, unable to believe his eyes. The news spread like wildfire. The garage buzzed into frantic motion. From the lead engineers to the front desk staff, everyone scrambled, wiping down control panels, tossing out trash, peeling off handwritten notes that didn't meet protocol. But one man quietly slipped away. Jeremiah Carter. He walked toward the locker room at the end of the hallway. No cameras, no eyes watching. The worn mechanic's uniform was folded with care. In its place, a deep navy button-down shirt, sharply creased slacks, wireframe glasses, and a black leather briefcase, softened by age. He adjusted his collar in the mirror, calmly, deliberately, not as someone trying to impress, but as someone who'd worn this attire his whole life and had simply set it aside for a few weeks to observe. When Jeremiah stepped back out, no one recognized him as the man who'd been under the Bentley just hours earlier, and no one suspected that the man they were about to bow and welcome had already heard every word of their scorn. The soft hiss of tires against concrete echoed like a silent alarm. A sleek black Mercedes Maybach rolled slowly into the courtyard of Silver Torque's Los Angeles headquarters. All the employees were lined up in 2 rows, shirts buttoned to the collar, ties perfectly knotted. Technicians stood tall, like an honor guard. At the center was Richard Blake, chief engineer, tall and composed, crisp white shirt without a single wrinkle, arm extended, smile rehearsed in the mirror. "Welcome, Mr. Carter. We've prepared the full performance report for this month." The rear door opened. Time seemed to freeze. And then, stepping out of the car, was the very black man Richard had humiliated just that morning. Thin-rimmed glasses, a calm, unreadable gaze, no smile, but no coldness either. "Jeremiah Carter, CEO of Silver Torque. Pleasure to see you again. Chief Engineer Blake." A wave of silence rippled through the air like a tremor. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Eyes darted between faces, shocked, confused, then slowly, realization sank in. Whispers broke the hush. "That's him? Oh no. This morning?" Richard couldn't speak. His face flushed red, then drained pale, like the blood had left his body under the midday sun. The outstretched handshake turned into a limp, dangling hand. His chest rose and fell, but not from the heat, from the weight of truth crashing down on him. The mechanic he told to shut up and tighten bolts now stood before him as the man with ultimate authority, and the entire garage fell still. Not out of fear, but because they had just witnessed the most brutal collapse of prejudice laid bare in front of them all. The Silver Torque Technical Conference Room was usually where they discussed electrical schematics, routine maintenance schedules, and cold, impersonal KPI charts. But today, it felt more like a courtroom. Jeremiah Carter sat at the head of the table. Gone were the oil-stained clothes and black gloves. In front of him, the garage's operations report, and across from him sat Richard Blake, his shirt now soaked with sweat down the spine. Jeremiah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply looked up, locking eyes with the man who had looked down on him just hours earlier. "If you had known I was the CEO," Jeremiah said, voice even and clear, "you probably wouldn't have called me a bolt tightener, would you?" Richard swallowed hard. No answer. Jeremiah gave a small nod, like he was confirming something they both already knew. "But because you thought I was just a black man working under the lift, you felt entitled to say I should stay quiet and let the professionals speak. You dismissed a valid safety warning, not because it was wrong, but because the man who said it wasn't wearing a white shirt." The room thickened. The scent of oil and hot rubber wasn't just physical anymore. It carried the heavy, stifling weight of shame. Some of the technicians lowered their heads, not from fear of punishment, but because they suddenly realized that their silence that morning had made them complicit. Jeremiah looked around the room. He didn't accuse anyone directly, but the way his eyes moved, it was like holding up a mirror to every face. "I'm not here to throw my title around," he said calmly. "I'm here to ask one question. In a garage built to service supercars, do we have the courage to repair a system that's already fractured from the inside out?" And in that moment, everyone understood. The system he was talking about wasn't just mechanical. Jeremiah gave a small nod to his technical assistant. The large screen at the front of the conference room flickered to life, displaying an audit report of premium vehicles from the past 3 months. Bentley, Porsche, Rolls-Royce. Then came the internal security footage. "This is the routine inspection of a McLaren 720S from 3 weeks ago," Jeremiah said, his voice steady, like he was reading off a VIN number. The slow-motion playback showed an OEM part being removed and replaced with a cheap aftermarket sensor of unknown origin. The next screen showed a materials cost chart from January to March. A sudden 17% drop in expenditures. A red caption flashed, "Exceeded cost-saving targets. Maximum bonus activated." The room turned ice cold. "We've identified 12 major technical violations," Jeremiah said, eyes locked on Richard. 3 cases of parts swapping, 5 falsified inspection records, 4 maintenance logs with altered data. A young engineer stammered from across the room. "We were told to optimize costs," Mr. Blake said. "If we saved enough, the whole team would get bonuses." Jeremiah nodded, not with anger, just understanding. He flipped through the stack of documents, his voice calm, unwavering. "Efficiency is necessary. But when it becomes an excuse to compromise professional ethics, we're no longer fixing cars. Around the table, we're breaking trust." Richard sat frozen, hands clenched together. The system he had overseen now resembled a car with counterfeit brakes. Shiny on the outside, deadly when in motion, and the man now peeling back the hood on that broken system was the same one he had once dismissed as just a bolt tightener. The air in the Silver Torque conference room had thickened, like old engine oil left too long in the tank. Every eye was fixed on the center table, where Jeremiah Carter calmly pulled out 2 signed documents. No theatrics, no anger, just the quiet resolve of a man who understood the weight of ethics and the consequences of trading them away. He slid both files across the table to Richard Blake, then said softly, "I'll let you choose." He tapped the first document. Option 1, immediate termination, a civil investigation for technical fraud and safety violations, revocation of your engineering license for a minimum of 5 years. Then he motioned to the second. Option 2, voluntary resignation, full repayment of bonuses earned over the past 3 quarters, and 6 months of unpaid service as a mentor at the vocational training center in South Central, where even an old car can change the direction of a young life. The room held its breath. Richard didn't look at anyone. The arrogance once etched into his expression was gone, replaced by a quiet kind of disorientation, the kind you feel when the mask finally falls off. The same hand that once held microphones at national conferences now trembled as it gripped a pen. He signed the second document. No one applauded. No one jeered. There was only silence. The kind of silence that happens when the world finally starts to correct itself after being off balance for far too long. Jeremiah stood up. He gave Richard one last look. Sometimes, the worst consequence isn't losing your job. It's realizing you lost the chance to become someone others could trust. And then, He walked out, leaving behind a man stripped of everything except the truth. The next morning, every employee was summoned to the center of the Silver Torque garage, the space usually reserved for showcasing freshly detailed supercars. But today, there were no cars on display, only a simple wooden platform, and Jeremiah Carter, standing not above his former subordinates, but among them, as teammates. He held no microphone, no printed speech, just a steady, deep voice, loud enough to reach the ears, soft enough to reach the heart. Silver Torque doesn't just fix cars. We fix what's broken in how people treat one another. The entire garage fell silent. Jeremiah looked around, at everyone, from the first-year receptionist to the veteran technician with 30 years under his belt. Then he continued, "I don't care if you went to MIT or learned your craft from your father. If you see something wrong, you have the right to speak up, and if anyone silences you because of your status or your skin color, they no longer belong here." Applause rang out, not the kind you give a boss for a good speech, but the kind you give when you finally feel seen, not for your title, but for your humanity. At the far end of the garage, Richard Blake quietly stepped out into the morning light. No one stopped him. No one turned their backs either. Only eyes followed, not with hatred, not with satisfaction, but with sorrow. Sorrow for a man who had every opportunity and lost it all, because he believed knowledge gave him permission to look down on others. And Silver Torque, it no longer just fixed cars. It had just changed the oil on an entire system of trust. 6 months had passed since the old system was torn down, like a rusted engine overdue for a rebuild. Silver Torque, Los Angeles, was now running on a brand new operating system. The once exclusive technical conference room was no longer the domain of the chief engineer alone. On the wall now hung a glowing digital board bearing the words, "Anonymous Technical Feedback, Every Voice Matters." The program, launched by Jeremiah, allowed every employee, from the night shift security guard to the newest apprentice mechanic, to report technical concerns, even if those concerns challenged the usual process. No signatures required, no press releases. And the results? They exceeded every expectation. Incidents dropped by 62%. VIP customer satisfaction rose by over 40%. Celebrities and high-profile clients began leaving reviews, not just about performance, but about a new culture of respect and listening. And Richard Blake, the man who once believed a degree placed him above others, now wore a worn-out t-shirt, teaching for free at a community auto center in South Central. "Last month, I taught a 15-year-old how to align a wheel axle," he shared. "He asked me, 'Do I need to go to college to become an engineer?' And for the first time, I gave an honest answer. No. But you do need to learn how to listen to people first." This garage didn't just change oil. It changed how people saw each other. Once a place where hierarchy spoke the loudest, Silver Torque had become something new. A workshop where every voice carried equal weight, as long as it spoke in the name of safety and with the conscience of a true professional. It was a quiet weekend afternoon. Sunlight streamed sideways through the window of a modest community training center in Inglewood. Inside a simple classroom, Richard Blake was bent over an old engine, showing 3 boys how to measure cylinder pressure. No white shirt, no tie, just a faded t-shirt and hands that were starting to grow calluses again. Jeremiah Carter stepped into the doorway. He didn't say a word, just watched in silence. Richard looked up and met that familiar gaze. He smiled. This time, it wasn't forced. "You came." Jeremiah walked in and set a cup of coffee on the workbench. Richard sat down on a wooden step, exhaled slowly. At first I thought, "You were punishing me," he said, "making me pay for my arrogance, for the things I said that day, soaked in prejudice." He paused, glancing at the boys, now huddled over an old gas tank, opening it like they were exploring a new galaxy. But the truth is, the one who's learned the most out of all this was me. He gave a small laugh, gentle, real. Those boys. They look at machines the way some people look at opportunity, with no fear, with no bias. And for the first time, I finally looked at myself the same way. Jeremiah didn't say anything, but in his eyes there was no triumph, only quiet pride. Not the pride of having taught someone a lesson, but the satisfaction of planting a seed and watching someone wake up. Richard Blake, once a man who judged others by degrees and polished shoes, was now inspiring others by getting low and learning from the ground up. A machine that overheats can shut down, but a human being, when they learn to cool their pride, can restart an entire life. It was an early Monday morning. The staff of Silver Torque, Los Angeles branch, had all gathered, not to receive a VIP client, not for a technical meeting, but to witness a moment that seemed small, yet would echo far beyond that day. Jeremiah Carter, wearing the same simple uniform he always did, tightened the final screw into the wall by the garage entrance. No ribbon cutting, no cameras, no reporters, just a bronze plaque gleaming under the California sun. "Here, we don't just fix cars, we fix the way people see one another." No one spoke, but many eyes were red, not because of the plaque, but because they had lived that sentence. The story of the CEO who once worked undercover, beneath layers of grease. The man who was dismissed as a bolt tightener in his own garage had now become part of the company's legacy. From one cruel, careless insult, he sparked a transformation, not just in engineering practices, but in respect, dialogue, and dignity. And Richard Blake? Every morning before he enters the community classroom, he stops at the door and reads that same line. At first, it felt like a punishment. Now, it's a reminder, one he's most grateful for. A garage once known only for tuning supercars was now being recognized for something greater, tuning the way people treat each other, from invisible habits to visible change. Because sometimes, a broken machine doesn't cause as much damage as a broken way of seeing.